Hey everybody, gonna be doing a new video here today. Just recently purchased a new toy. It's a Ridgid 14-inch bandsaw that I picked up from Home Depot. They're asking $369 for it. I wound up paying I think around $430 for this with the shipping. Unfortunately I don't know if it's unfortunately, but it's 350 pounds, and unfortunately for the shipping side of it, it can only be shipped freight, so they charge you quite a bit to ship it on a 18-wheeler to the house. So anyway, I got it, and I'm finally going to have a chance today to set it up. It looks like it's in like 100 million pieces in this box here. And like I said, the box weighs an absolute ton. So I'm going to get started here. I'm going to crack it open, and we'll check out all the parts. Alright, just got done tearing into her here, and as you can see in the box still, I have just basically the meat and potatoes part of this. It's the actual saw portion. Got the motor down there in the middle, and up on my bench here I kind of have all the rest of the parts. So this is the aluminum table for it, which has this crap all over it. I don't know what this is. It's like sticky and I don't know, something from the plastic maybe, but hopefully that comes off. Got the manual here, and I guess the setup directions. Got a big pack of hardware. Looks like adjustable feet for the legs of the table, a bunch of bolts, nuts, washers, key switch for the, I guess, turn the motor on, the wrench, just a whole bunch of things here. This looks like it's probably the leg assembly for the tables. This looks like a guard for the I guess the motor and going over to one of the pulleys and the belt. And I believe this is probably the base for the table, or the top of the table I should say. So I'm going to crack into these directions here, and we'll get started. Okay, first step here almost complete. Probably not even worth filming or telling you about, because it's pretty straightforward how this goes together. It's basically all you're doing is you're throwing these carriage bolts through these slotted holes on the legs. Then on the back side you're throwing on a washer, a lock washer, and a nut. And it's pretty repetitive. There's probably about 30 of these that you got to put on. One mistake I did make that I'll mention in case you're just following this video to assemble this thing and not looking at the directions. I went ahead and put all these mid supports in on the legs and socked them all down before I went ahead and threw the table portion on here. Don't do that, because you're going to have to wind up going back and loosening every single one of them up, because as you can see when this thing is partially assembled, the legs sit on an angle. They're not, straight up and down, or perpendicular I should say, to the table. So you actually have to fold these in, and then once you get the angle for how these have to be, then you can go ahead and tighten these. So not a minor thing, just set me back a couple of minutes, but just something to note. And one other thing I wanted to mention before I forget, that oil that I mentioned that was all over the the aluminum table portion, that is actually on there on purpose from the factory. It supposedly puts a coating on the aluminum when they're shipping it to protect it. So I don't know if they're worried about it corroding or whatnot, but they said household degreaser takes all that off. Alright, so I'm going to continue on with the assembling the legs on here, and I'll bring it back for the next step. So wow boys, that took all afternoon. I'm into the darkness now. Nah, just kidding. That wasn't too bad. It took about half an hour to assemble. There's actually 40 carriage bolts, nuts, washers, lock washers, all that crap that has to go into putting this thing together. So pretty straightforward. Looks like we got that done just now. Got the stand put together. Looks like we have to mount the actual saw to the base now. Looks like there's a plate or something, and some more lock washers and hex nuts. Okay, so as you can see, I got the saw now mounted to the base, and yeah, this is going to be my first real complaint about this assembly. So like I was saying, they want you to mount this piece of angle iron underneath the table here, and then the bolts go through that, and then you screw the nuts on underneath. And with one person that's kind of difficult, because you got to essentially hold this nut here, or the bolt rather, put this plate up underneath, and then you got to, like I said, have the bolt going through. You got to put a regular washer, a lock washer, and the nut while holding that bracket there. It's kind of stupid. I don't know why they don't incorporate that into the actual table. I bet that they had to beef that up at some point after they initially produced this and realized that they were going to have to include that piece there, and that's why they did that. So, other than that, really pretty straightforward. It's just a pain in the ass. Like I said, it's just 4 bolts, 1 at each corner, 2 in the front there, 2 in the back, and that's it. Next step, we're going to be mounting the motor on there. Looks like it basically goes on in a similar fashion, except you're going to be adding these rubber grommets, I guess, to I don't know, I guess isolate the vibration of the motor, maybe. And you're going to put these washers, again a washer, a lock washer, and a nut on. So the motor is mounted onto the base now. Just the 4 bolts on all 4 corners. Got these rubber grommets underneath here, as you can see. And that does reduce the vibration of the motor on the stand. Next step is going to be installing the belt, as you can see here. And what you got to do first, as per the directions, is, as you can see here, if I can get a good shot in here, you can see that basically the pulley on the motor and the pulley on the saw here, turning the lower wheel for the blade, you got to align these so the belt sits on here straight. So as you can see now, the one on the motor is out a little further than the one on the saw. Both these do have adjustments via this Allen key set screw right here. Like I said, this one has it too, which is right down in there, and it's basically a keywayed shaft, I should say, that you can adjust both these pulleys. Looks like what I'm probably going to do is pull this guy out a little bit more. I don't want to stick this one out and have this shaft start being exposed, so I'm going to adjust that out. Basically how they say to do that is you grab this one here, take a straight edge, and you're going to hold it up to these and basically do the best you can in getting it you know, parallel to each other until the belt tracks properly on both the pulleys. After you get these 2 pulleys aligned as best as you can, and I was an idiot, I showed you putting this straight edge on the outside of these. What you're actually supposed to do is stick the ruler into the tracks, and then, you know, line it up that way the best you can. So I did that. Like I told you, I was going to loosen this pulley up and pull it out. Trick with that is, like I said, you got to loosen up the set screw on there. And what I did was I took my hammer, I just put the claw behind the pulley here, and I gently pried, and it eventually started moving out. It was a little tricky at first, but it eventually started to move, and then it got smoother. So after you do that, get it aligned, you're going to go ahead and track the belt over the pulleys, which is pretty easy because you don't have any tension on it yet. And then what you got to do is basically pry the motor backwards, you know, towards the camera right now, to put tension on the belt. Okay. The way I did that was I just basically jammed a 2x4 in here, and what I was able to do was, as you can see, I got my leg up against this. I was able to push with my leg up against this, you know, as much as I could to get the pulley tight, or I should be saying the belt tight. So get the belt tight, and then I was able to tighten the rear bolt here, you know, just enough where the motor wouldn't move backwards again from the tension. So again, just put your leg up against it, pry it back, tighten that bolt down, and then you'll be good. And, as you can see now, the belt's pretty tight. Another negative thing that I'll mention with this is the way they package the belt. they kind of threw the belt underneath the, well, the belt actually came wound up inside the case here. And they had it all twisted and bent, and it kind of deformed the belt a lot. As you can see here, it's, you know, it's kind of sitting on there crooked now. I hope it, you know, bends back into shape being on there now. But that was kind of stupid the way they did that. One other thing I found kind of stupid with this is that the motor was packaged basically in this slot here in the box, and they had the cord basically crushed underneath the blade here. The blade came pre-installed, so you know it nicked the cable. I forget exactly where it was, but it doesn't look like it really hit the conductors, so got lucky there. But that was another stupid thing, the way they boxed it. So check that if you know, once you pop yours out of your box. And guess now I'm just going to tighten these 4 bolts, the other 3 of them on the motor here. And okay, so the motor is all bolted up on here, nice and tight. Belt is tensioned properly. Basically, you want you know, around a 1/2 inch of deflection when you do this, which is what I got. And what I went ahead and did is I plugged it in, and you know, for safety measures, I just went and did a quick tighten on the bearings on here, basically down here and up here, just so I can do a quick test. I wanted to check the operation of the belt. We're going to get more into setting all this up you know, later on in the video, but again, I wanted to check the tension of the belt and see how it operates. So here we go. So yeah, I went ahead and tried this out, you know, once before. I just did this now in the video, and as you can see, the motor's kind of dancing around a lot, and the belt's running kind of sloppy on the pulleys. And like I was saying before, I think the reason for that is because they kind of screwed this belt up bad by the way they had it packaged. What I'm going to do is overnight I'm going to try to sit it in a way where all these twists in it are going to be sitting on both the pulleys, and hopefully that straightens it out. Otherwise I'm going to have to pick a new pulley up, belt up for this. Yeah, so that kind of sucks. So anyway, like I said, I wanted to do that, and we unplug it here now. I wanted to do that before I went ahead and threw the guard on, because obviously you're not going to be able to see that. But that is the next step, which is the guard assembly, and basically putting on these 2 stupid plastic things that they say you can hang extra belts, not belts, extra blades on, which they're kind of useless in my opinion. But I'll put them on there anyway. So that just goes on with some hex nuts. And then basically you're just going to mount the whole guard assembly onto the saw with these 2 bolts here in the through the base. So I'll do that now. So moving along here, went ahead and got the next 3 steps done. Fairly easy steps, like I was saying, mounting the belt and pulley guard. Basically all that is 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3. Also went ahead and mounted on these stupid hangers for the blade, an extra blade. So that guy's on there. I went ahead and mounted this switch, which basically gets mounted by way of 2 screws also. 1 screw there, 1 screw down in there. So that's fastened on there nice. And just another simple step here is mounting this dust collection adapter, I guess you'd call it, so you can put a shop vac hose onto here for dust collection. And that's just by 2 screws in here as well. Okay guys, so a few more simple things here, and we're coming down home stretch. Basically what you got to do is you got to mount this table support bracket to the saw. That's done by these 2 hex bolts right here. You're going to also thread this this bolt into here, and that's basically a support, well, part of the support for the table. Alright, so you get that bolted on there and tight. You also got to screw this this indicator, I don't know what you call this thing, an indicator for the bevel on the table, which anybody who does even a little bit of woodworking knows you never ever trust one of those things. So that's just on there for, I guess, eye candy, because If you trust that thing to dial in an accurate bevel on this, then you're going to be asking for trouble, because as you can see right here, this thing kind of bends quite easily. So I don't know how good or what they're ever thinking by putting one of these things on the table, but it's there, so we'll go with it. All right, so basically, also you had to mount this gauge onto the bottom of the table here by these two panhead screws, and that's really it. Clean the top of the table off with some good old carburetor cleaner, and we're going to mount it onto the saw now. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up the installation of the components on the saw. I got the table on here now. That is mounted by way of these two knobs underneath here, as you can see. The reason why these are knobs is so you can loosen them up and you can adjust the pivot on the table. Alright, and as you can see here with this crappy gauge, you can kind of dial in as best you can and then go about your business, tighten it back up, and do your cutting. As far as putting the table on here, really all you got to do is you just slide the blade through this hole on here, you rotate the table around 90 degrees, drop it down into the pins, and then put the those knobs on underneath, reinstall your throat plate, and you are good to go. One other thing I wanted to mention about the saw, the motor comes with the capability of wiring it for 120 or 240 volts. Okay, it comes pre-wired from the factory for 120 volts with just your standard 120 volt plug on it. There is detailed directions for wiring this for 240. What I might go ahead and do is I'll run this with the 120. If I want to get a little more out of the saw, maybe I'll go ahead and run a 240 volt circuit in here, and I quite possibly can post a video on that in the future if I want to do that, because I do have the capability. That's one of the reasons why I ran a two hot legs out here, so I can run 240 volt circuits. If you want to see a little bit more about this, I have a few other videos on my channel about the installation of the electric out in my workshop here. You can check that out. And that basically wraps everything up for the saw. You got a few more adjustments back here just before I close this down that I wanted to show you. This is basically for the tension on the belt. This all comes preset from the factory to run properly right out of the box as per the directions. If you have to make any further adjustments, there is detailed directions in there on how to do that. You basically got these two knobs here that you can play around with, and it gives you a guide here of your settings and whatnot. I'd have to look more into the manual on how that works. I quite possibly can post another video about that in the future if you guys want. And yeah, you have your adjustment of your stock here as well. And again, these are all things I'm going to play around with once I get into using the saw. And what I will definitely go ahead and do is I'll post a review video about this maybe a month or two down the road after using it for a little bit and see how it's been working for me. So like I said, that's about it guys. I appreciate you watching. I hope you found this informative. You got any questions, post them down below in the comments section. I'll do my best to answer them for you. And like always, thanks for watching.